This message comes from Mint Mobile. Starting at $15 a month, make the switch at mintmobile.com/switch. $45 upfront payment for 3 months. 5 gigabyte plan equivalent to $15 a month. Taxes and fees extra. First 3 months only. See terms.
We're never going to be able to eliminate all threats. That's just not a world, unfortunately, I think we can live in. But we have to build a practice that, like, baseline helps us feel not like cuckoo banana pants every day. Right. Because you cannot function from a place of completely overwhelmed and freaked out.
Hello, hello. I'm Brittany Luce, and you're listening to It's Been a Minute from NPR, a show about what's going on in culture and why it doesn't happen by accident. Do you feel safe, like in your relationships, in our country? According to Gallup, our national fears around crime have actually dropped a lot in the past couple of years from big spikes. But still, 49%, about half of Americans, see crime in the U.S. as extremely or very serious. And the same numbers say that they think there's more crime now than there was a year ago. I've been thinking about this because I've also seen a lot of fear, or at least the rhetoric of fear, around being victimized by specific groups, like immigrants.
Crime in this country is through the roof, and we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime.
And trans people.
Transgender identifying individuals are the single most likely demographic group in the entire country to commit deadly mass shootings.
For the record, that's definitely not true. Trans people are extremely underrepresented among mass shooters compared to population size, and immigrants are less likely to commit crimes than natural-born citizens. But what's becoming clear to me is that there's a lot of fear going around. A lot of it is understandable, and a lot of it is unfounded. What I really want to know is, how can we tell the difference between being unsafe and feeling unsafe?
I think that the language of, like, safety and harm has just kind of pervaded so much content on social media. And it could be, it's sort of just like, am I safe? Are safe people around me? Do I have the right boundaries? Like, there's just some notion of trying to keep the wrong people away and the right ones in. I just feel like that language is kind of suffused into everything right now.
To get deeper into it, I'm joined by Nicole Lewis, engagement editor at the Marshall Project.
Thanks for having me.
And writer and editor Lex McMenamin.
Thanks for having us.
I feel like I've been seeing more people freaked out about their safety. One of the things I think about is, like, the TikToks of people, like, intruder-proofing their hotel rooms with all sorts of gadgets that would, like, set off alarms, and, you know, they're doing interesting things with, like, the door handle and the locks and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, I always think about this in the context of, like, Ring cameras, which obviously footage from people's doorbells, like, will go viral a lot.
Yeah.
I was also thinking about the T app, which had, like, a big flashlight.
Oh, yeah, the T app.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So I wrote about the T app in the context of, like, how it got hacked. TLDR, this was an app where women could, quote-unquote, anonymously list, you know, bad experiences they've had with men, and then the men would be listed with their photos and their first names, etc. The whole basis of the app is the idea that, like, you will be safer with strangers on an app talking about other people, which could actually come back to you because the tech isn't secure enough that you, like, what if it got hacked and every single person who spoke on one person got back to that guy, right? Like, that actually would totally collapse those things. And instead, we're exchanging our data in what we hope is going to be, like, a quick fix to what is a very real threat, like how like unsafe women are. I mean, frankly, how unsafe we all are in a society, like, where we can't be expected to, like, treat each other safely. And so, like, that was a really clear example of, like, the surveillance tech, like, leading people in the wrong direction, thinking that they're providing a solution. And obviously, in the last 3 months, we have not ended violence against women, sorry to say, to the T app. So
I want to get into it. I mean, I think there's a difference between feeling unsafe and actually being unsafe. What happens in that difference?
I think fear is a really complex, big emotion. We all have it, and we've all felt afraid at one point or another. And I think we just have to ask ourselves, right, is this fear something that is inside of me and being triggered or generated from an event from the past, right? Am I currently under threat? And I actually think that like threat and risk are better ways of talking about fear, right? So if you're under threat, you might feel afraid, but there's a real something tangible, something out there in the world that you can point to say this specific thing is currently
like someone is like, I'm about to knock you out.
Totally.
That's
You're
a
being
threat.
threatened and
Yeah.
you might feel fear. And there's a certain amount of proximity, I think, that goes into that.
So you've explained threat. Explain risk, what you mean by that.
Yeah, it's the sort of likelihood that a threat is going to cause harm. How real is it to me, right? How harmed might I be, right? And it helps us kind of gauge our reaction to how scared should I be? So if someone like my friend says, I'm going to knock you out. Well, that is threatening language.
Yeah.
But my assessment of the risk, right, is saying the risk is pretty low. She's probably not going to do that.
Yeah.
She's my friend. She cares about me, right? So I can temper the amount of fear that I feel. And I think people have a hard time with distinguishing that, like, fear is an emotion. And often it takes a lot of work and emotional intelligence, right, to kind of decode, am I just triggered and upset because hard things have happened in my life and so I feel like this is threatening and risky, or am I actually being threatened? And there's a big difference.
Right. There's a lot of feeling unsafe in this country that I don't want to say it's like astroturfed, but it was like people were told that they were unsafe by the federal government. Leaders of both parties, right, as this long backlash to the calls to defund the police and abolish the police, et cetera, in 2020. So that's one thing. And so while you're watching all of this discourse, there are a lot of people who are actually really, really, really unsafe and at risk being targeted, who are often very unsafe in the face of police and also at the hands of the state and also at random vigilante violence that are essentially being abandoned because of the way that we allow the idea of feeling unsafe to take precedence over who is actually unsafe or at risk or being targeted. I see this most directly this year, not only with immigration, right? The way that the government and also just like the media ecosystems are talking about migrants is extremely dehumanizing. And then what migrants are actually experiencing is being snatched off the street and simultaneously being called, like, as people, quote unquote, a risk, a threat. Or I wrote earlier this year about Nancy Mace screaming about, like, how they need to protect women, quote unquote, by following other women into bathrooms and, like, antagonizing them.
Now,
and that
to
actually
me would feel
unsafe.
like a threat.
That is threatening.
And it also obscures that, like, you know, statistically, trans people are 4 times as likely as cis people to be victims of violent crime, whether from a stranger or someone they know in real life, which the majority of quote-unquote violent crime is between people that already know each other.
Right.
Like, the idea of, like, the dangerous stranger in and of itself is, like, a media myth that contributes to this general, like, feel unsafe, feel scared all the time so we can do whatever we want to protect you.
To piggyback on a lot of what Lex said, fear is weaponized, right? We are told we're not safe and the state exists, police departments, whatever, whoever exists to protect us from threats looming, you know, some of them are more named than others. Safety, a feeling of safety, some of it is being able to step back and do the work I think Lex is talking about of understanding how much fear in this country is weaponized against you.
Lex gave us some really good examples of the consequences, right, of people feeling unsafe where they might not actually be unsafe. I mean, you know, fear has been used to justify police brutality and even, you know, vigilantism or extrajudicial killings of black men and boys, like in the cases of Jordan Neely, Ahmaud Arbery, Trayvon Martin.
Yeah, I mean, very well said. So from the beginning of this nation, even sort of before it, we've been told that certain groups of people, certain bodies in particular, are particularly threatening. So much of the idea of the American project is embedded in that notion, right? Of certain bodies get to be put to work and brutalized, and it's in some ways for their own good or civilization or to help them become better Christians, right? To integrate them in some functional way into a civilized, gentle Christian society. And so when you really step back and you think about it, think about how much violence it has actually taken in order to live that project out. For Black people in particular in the United States, we're often told that we're the ones to be feared, right? That we're the ones that are looming, that are doing the crime, that the state exists and police exist to kind of keep everyone else sort of safe from us and from our communities.
Yeah.
But in reality, it's the state that's actually doing a lot of the violence a lot of the time. And if it's not the state in the sense of like the police, governments, right, policies that are inherently violent, it's other citizens who can use the idea that they're so scared and so afraid to erect a self-defense argument that often the courts like will buy. Will say, okay, no big deal. George Zimmerman was, he's just standing his ground and he's doing his job as a neighborhood watch person, and that makes sense, right? It says to the rest of white America, you understand why I needed to use this amount of force, right? You get why I had to do this. I was being threatened.
So many of these examples of some of the myths that perpetuate these fears of different kinds of people, they can become quite outsized and not in touch with, like, not just reality, but more, to really ground this, statistics. You spoke earlier, Lex, about how, trans people have been smeared as predators, even though studies have shown that trans people are not a particular threat to other people in the bathroom. But we've seen a new strain of this. There have been a lot of false claims about trans people causing mass shootings when they are extremely underrepresented within that group compared to population size. Why do people feel unsafe about trans people in that specific way? And how is that being weaponized?
Statistically, most mass shooters are cisgender white men. And the reason I'm clarifying that is that, like, the 2024 election, where the way that the two parties are talking about it is like the election was decided by young white men who went so harsh for Trump, right? Mm-hmm. So this has been like a concept that has been very attractive to the right, I think, largely because if the shooter is trans, then it like buttresses out this whole argument that the Republican Party has been making and the Democratic Party has been trying to like sidestep, that it's like pronouns are why your groceries are expensive. Pronouns are why like we don't have traditional family values anymore because, and I take this from many, like, frankly, like older Black trans thinkers and organizers. There has always been a connection between how like people are racialized as being aggressive and how like trans people or people whose genders are quote unquote deviant are also like categorized as aggressive because both like Blackness and transness are threats to like white cis hetero hegemony.
Coming up,
if your friends and your communities come to you and say, I'm so freaked out, they're spouting off conspiracy theories and they're telling you, what they're so scared of, it's actually worked together to kind of step back and think and ask them, give me an example of this threat in your life.
Stick around.
This message comes from Schwab. Everyone has moments when they could have done better, like cutting their own hair or forgetting sunscreen, so now you look like a tomato. Same goes for where you invest. Level up and invest smarter with Schwab. Get market insights, education, and human help when you need it. Learn more at schwab.com.
This message comes from the Council for Interior Design Qualification. Interior designer and CIDQ president Siavash Madani describes the rigor of NCIDQ certification.
An NCIDQ certified interior designer must complete a minimum of 6 years of specialized education and work experience. Being NCIDQ certified means that you've proven your knowledge and skills and are recognized as a qualified interior design professional.
Learn more at cidq.org/NPR. This message comes from Whole Foods Market. Get Thanksgiving ready with quality and savings at Whole Foods Market. Their 365 brand offers great prices and the high standards you count on. Prime members can pick up no antibiotics ever turkeys starting at just $1.49 a pound. Complete your feast with classic sides. Think mashed potatoes, condensed soups, and fresh organic produce like green beans, mushrooms, and carrots. Shop low prices and high quality in store or online. Terms apply.
This message comes from Capital One Commercial Bank. Your business requires commercial banking solutions that prioritize your long-term success. With Capital One, get a full suite of financial products and services tailored to meet your needs today and goals for tomorrow. Learn more at CapitalOne.com/commercial. Member FDIC.
Okay, so There are a lot of ways in which people can be vulnerable and be unsafe. And obviously, being a human being means that sometimes we encounter situations that aren't safe, or we can sometimes come across real, actual threats, especially if you're a member of certain groups, who are more likely to encounter violence. But I don't know. What about people who see, those big stories on the news about, big or high profile crimes, or about just the crime that's happening in their community, and they really do feel unsafe? Is it fair to say that people shouldn't be worried?
You can't actually fight fear and a sense of unsafety with facts. They just don't. They kind of miss each other. And so that's a big challenge. So I'll start there, and then I'm going to give you a few facts, and then I'll come back.
Okay.
Right? So it is still important to understand that in the United States, we live in a period of historically low crime rates. Mm-hmm. That's really important to understand. And so the perception that things are happening is directly connected to how unsafe or safe people feel. So turn the source off, dial it down, right? You don't actually need to be exposed to every single incident that's happening around you. At the same time, for our industry, right, we do need to ask ourselves, how important is it for us to actually cover every little crime? There's a graphic that I can't remember who, I wish I had it in front of me, but there is a graphic that showed the causes of death on one side and then the coverage of death, right, causes on the other. And it's murder and homicide that the media harps on just way more than they talk about anything else.
Right. Our World in Data did this. And the top 2 causes of death, heart disease and cancer, they account for over half of deaths, right? But over half of causes of death covered by the New York Times, Washington Post, and Fox News are murder and terrorism. And those things in reality make up 1% of deaths in the U.S.
So I do think we need to, scale it back, right?
As a transmasculine, non-binary person, I have a lot of trans people in my immediate life who over the last 2 years have felt extremely unsafe. Extremely unsafe. In the 5 boroughs of New York City. I know people who've had to relocate out of Florida, New Hampshire, Texas, whatever, the last few years, but people living in New York City.
Which is a destination for many people to come to feel more safe.
It's a trans refugee locale. I know they feel unsafe because, I know many people who've had just individual horror stories purely on the basis of just being trans. And then I know other people who have fled the country since the 2024 election because they no longer felt safe. I met multiple people in the last couple of months who've moved to Europe, whatever. Not everyone can afford to do that. I've had to have these conversations with them too because you can't live your life walking around expecting to get popped in the face all the time because you act like a crazy person if you live like that. And it actually isolates you. That's not ultimately what has made people feel safer. It's talking to each other and being yeah, let's walk home together. Or I know this person hangs out at this corner, don't go there. So I'm not trying to tell anybody that they should never feel unsafe. We can't actually control our lives.
No.
That's what we keep talking about. Random violence, you can't get an app to make that go away.
No, Lex, I think that's really powerful because I'm a Black woman again. I think about my own safety in certain dimensions.
Yeah.
The risk to me as someone who dates men are so risky, right? They're so threatening.
Is true.
They're so potentially threatening to my physical, emotional, safety. And I think lots of people could say you're hysterical, right? That typical woman. But the statistics really bear that out.
Oh, yes.
So if I were to get pregnant, and let's talk about it.
Yes.
That my intimate partner would be it's the most likely person to murder me.
When a woman in a heterosexual relationship gets pregnant, if I'm not mistaken, I think she becomes more likely to be killed by her partner.
That is really astounding. It's the leading cause of death for pregnant women in the United States. So again, I'm single. I am not pregnant, right? So currently I'm not threatened and I'm not at risk and I don't feel afraid. But this is half the population I regard sometimes as people who are threatening to me. And it still comes back to the fact that, we have to practice, and many communities have practiced, the same things that we're talking about of turning towards each other, supporting each other, holding each other, right? Women take each other to the bathroom, right? And we look after our drink. There's a practice here.
Yeah, there's skills.
There's skills.
And there's skills that are shared, that are taught, that are passed.
It's important for us to, resist our own, right?
Urge to,
correct, to flee or to leave or to withdraw. And so I think that there's a practice, and again, not an easy one, in which you're trying to like return to your physical body, right? Trying to check in with yourself and your current surroundings, trying to practice a certain amount of presence so that you can make real assessments of the risk around you. And again, I don't think that's like an individual woo-woo self-care thing. I actually think it's a thing that needs to be done in community, that we do for and with each other all the time, so that if your friends and your communities come to you and say, I'm so freaked out, they're spouting off conspiracy theories and they're telling you, you know, what they're so scared of, it's actually worked together to kind of step back and think and ask them, give me an example of this threat in your life. How much risk is there, right? Like, we actually have to hold one another in some of that. And I think that only once we get there in our communities, and you can have another higher order conversation about, like, how would we actually build institutions that feel promoting of safety, right? Like, what would good policy actually look like that would make Americans feel safer? I think there's some really basic things. I think the notion that our healthcare is totally tied to our employment is a nutty thing that makes lots of people feel probably very unsafe. So I think that it's like really kind of delving in and thinking you're trying to find some amount of baseline, right? Because we're never going to be able to eliminate all threats. That's just not a world, unfortunately, I think we can live in. But we have to build a practice that, like, baseline helps us feel not like cuckoo banana pants every day. Right. Because you cannot function from a place of completely overwhelmed and freaked out about, like, your basic things and your basic needs, right? That is not going to work, so that you can get to some better conversation about, like, what would human supporting, health supportive, safe supportive policy actually look like here.
I came across an interesting study that showed safety confidence was correlated with, to what y'all are saying, extroversion, openness, and general confidence. While people who feared crime more were less extroverted, less emotionally stable, and were more likely to have symptoms consistent with depression. I feel like this is worth talking about. We are statistically less likely to spend time with people now. And depression is on the rise. I obviously can't speak to the causality of these things, but in my opinion, I think that being around other people is really important to feeling safe. Like, if you're around strangers, I mean, at least in my experience, if you're around strangers more often, you might see them as less of a threat. You know, you get to have more practice at evaluating whether other people are safe to be around. I think about, like, you know, when you talk about dating, Nicole, one of the things that I had to get over, having had some dealt with violence, like dating violence from men in, like, as a young person, something that I had to learn to do, to your point, Lex, was like, okay, well, I don't want to be shut up in my house, not doing the things that I like to do, going to the club, talking to people, getting my flirt on. Okay.
Hell yeah.
I didn't want to not do those things.
What kind of life is that?
Yeah, I didn't want to do those things. And so I remember, like, working with my therapist. One of the things she said, she's like, we can have some strategies to help you figure out how to keep yourself safe and evaluate, give yourself the power of evaluating, like, how other people make you feel, and then deciding what you want to do next. This study, it lines up with what I have experienced in my own life as far as, like, safety, healing, repair, confidence. Those are things I don't think they, you know, based on this conversation, it sounds like these are things that kind of need to be built as a group project by necessity.
There needs to be more opportunities at a low cost, in a really publicly accessible way, to think about the skills that we want to learn. And I think many of us, unfortunately, we learn them the hard way. We learn them after some threat happens, after we're harmed, and then we have to find our way back into public life, and because we want to have a big life. Yeah. And that's really incredibly important and incredibly hard work. It's also pretty unfair. Right? It's also
I'd say so.
So I would want to live in a world, right, where from birth, the notion of feeling physically powerful and comfortable in your own body that I think we can all inhabit in different ways is a practice as well. It is a skill.
My gosh, I was deeply invigorated by this conversation.
Me too.
Nicole, Lex, thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was Nicole Lewis, engagement editor at The Marshall Project, and writer and editor Lex McMenamin. So you all know I love hearing from you. And over the past few weeks, some of you have left the sweetest notes for me in the comments and reviews. One of y'all wrote, "This is my favorite podcast produced by NPR." Me too. Another wrote, "Thanks for enriching my life." You guys, I'm blushing. And if any of those comments resonate with you, I would love, love, love it if you rated and reviewed this show wherever you're listening. It helps other people find the show, and that means this community we're building will get even bigger. So join the team. Rate and review this show right now. And thank you. This episode of It's Been a Minute was produced by
Liam McBain.
This episode was edited by
Nina Patak.
Our supervising producer is
Barton Girdwood.
Our executive producer is
Verilyn Williams.
Our VP of programming is
Yolanda Sanguini.
All right, that's all for this episode of It's Been a Minute from NPR. I'm Brittany Luce. Talk soon.
This message comes from Vital Farms, who works with small American farms to bring you pasture-raised eggs. Farmer Tanner Pace shares why he believes it's important to care for his land and how he hopes to pass the opportunity to farm onto his sons.
We're paving the way for a future. We only have one Earth, and we have to make it count. Like my boys, I want to see them taking care of the land for them to be able to farm and then generations to come. I really enjoy seeing, especially my whole family up there working with me, and to be able to instill the things that my father, mother, and then grandparents instilled in me that I can instill in the boys. That's just the most rewarding thing that there could ever be. Vital Farms, they're motivated for the well-being of the animals, for the well-being of the land, the whole grand scope of things. They care about it all, and that means a lot to me.
To learn more about how Vital Farms farmers care for their hens, visit vitalfarms.com.
This message is sponsored by DSW, the birthplace of the humble brag. Full of all kinds of shoes that get you at prices that get your budget. And when there are never-ending options for every style, mood, occasion, and budget, there is unlimited freedom to play. And that's something to brag about. So go ahead, stock up on fresh sneakers from your favorite brands. Or try those boots you always secretly knew you could pull off. Find the shoes that get you at prices that get your budget. DSW, let them surprise you.